Good morning, classes. Today is May 4th, 2020, and today we are going to be finishing up our material on classification. So this video here will not be real long. I will not take 15 minutes, I hope. So after you watch this video, use the information that was on the screen here, or go back and watch the video, and you will complete a journaling assignment called Building the Tree of Life. And if you want full points for this assignment, 15 is what the value of it is, make sure you write full paragraphs for each question. Okay? If you go and write just a sentence or something, you won't receive full credit. Take the time, do a good job. It's no rush. Just do a complete job here. And then Wednesday we will start ecology, which is chapter 3, and actually our last 3 chapters that we'll cover here before the end of this school year deal with ecology and some lot of fun things in ecology. I think you guys will like it. All right, so 18.3 is called Building the Tree of Life, and this section in our textbook investigates the changing classification systems. And this is one thing that I think brings up some argument sometimes with science and other areas of life, is the way that science works, and maybe a misunderstanding of how it works. Remember, science uses the information and evidence that we have to come up with a theory or a idea or a guess as to what may have happened, what could happen. And so information can change. As we learn more information, as we make more discoveries and advancements, then information could change. So here we see the number of kingdoms and the names of those kingdoms, and roughly the time frame when we had those kingdoms in place. So, if you were to come across a science textbook or a science book from, the 1700s, the 1800s, even in the middle of the 1900s, things could look different. So we see here, and this is what you will be investigating for your journaling assignment. In the 1700s, we had 2 kingdoms. We had the Plantae and Animalia, and I think you guys can see what that means, plants and animals. In the late 1800s, we added a new kingdom called Protista. In the 1950s, we divided. You can see the plants now are not just the plant kingdom. We now also have the fungi. And the Protista, or the protists, we also have one called Monera. And then the 1990s, which I'm going to date myself here. That was when I was in high school. Eubacteria, Archaebacteria, Protista, fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. Now, I'm going to also date myself another way in terms of memory here. I do not recall when I was in high school if we learned 6 kingdoms or 5. And I want to say we learned 5. And I don't know if that is a result of me going to a Class B school, and maybe we had an old textbook, or maybe the change was made depending on what year. I graduated in 1997, so when I took field biology, it would have been, when I took biology, it would have been 1995. So I'm not sure when this happened exactly, but you could investigate that for your journal today. All right, and now what we have is we have our 6 kingdoms, as you can see right here. Eubacteria, Archaebacteria, Protista, fungi, Plantae, and Animalia. But we also have kind of a larger umbrella of classification called a domain. Okay, so we aren't saying we don't have a kingdom. We just have another way of grouping some of these kingdoms together. And domain is a category that's even larger than a kingdom. Okay, so within the bacteria domain, we have a kingdom called Eubacteria. Okay, now that should look familiar at beginning, because I think if you think back at the beginning of the year, if you remember the word eukaryote, okay, and prokaryote in terms of cells, that translated to pro meaning before and eu meaning true in terms of a nucleus, right? So eukaryotes had a nucleus, prokaryotes did not. And so eubacteria, these are kind of like the true bacteria, the bacteria that we usually think about in life. Okay, archae, the domain, and archaebacteria, an archaeologist deals with things from long ago, right? Looking at previous life and evidence of that life. So archae refers to ancient, okay? So you can read that as ancient bacteria. And then we have our protists, fungi, plants, and animals. Now, what you need to look at to understand today's assignment is not only the cell type, but also the structures of the cell. So if we go across here, we see some explanations about how the cell walls, if they have a cell wall, are structured. Okay, so we see peptidoglycan, the absence of that. We see cellulose. We see chloroplasts, which you should remember as the organelle that helps to photosynthesize. Chitin, cellulose, okay, and then even no cell walls, animals, right? Okay, we also have number of cells. We have anywhere from unicellular to multicellular to some that have organisms that are both multicellular and some unicellular organisms in certain categories. Mode of nutrition, and we talked about this back in photosynthesis, chapter 8 and 9. An autotroph is something that makes its own food. A heterotroph is something that eats another living thing to get its nutrients. So we see some categories, like the animals, only have one style of nutrition, heterotrophs. As animals, we must eat other living things, whereas plants, they're an autotroph. And some groups have examples of each. And here's a couple examples of some of those domains and kingdoms. Streptococcus bacteria. If you ever had strep throat, that's the name of the bacteria that causes that. Bacteria are also named for their shape. Okay, and then you've all heard of E. coli. There's the full name of E. coli. Okay, archaebacteria, these are like methanogens and halophiles. They sound very chemical in name. These are actually bacteria that live in very harsh environments. Think of, like, if any of you have ever gone to Yellowstone National Park, some of the water pools that they have there and the geysers, these are very intense, low oxygen content water, and there are things that can live in there, and it's these things, the archaebacteria. Okay, you've probably all heard of amoeba and other smaller creatures like paramecia, slime molds, but we also have big things like giant kelp that live in the ocean that are examples of protists. Mushrooms and yeasts are examples of fungi. Okay, every time I eat a pizza, gotta have mushrooms on that thing, gotta have fungi on there. Yeast help the dough to rise, right? Plants, mosses, ferns, flowering plants, trees, cactus. You guys get the idea there. And animals, I don't think I have to explain to you what an animal is, right? So, all right. So, knowing this information, Go ahead, find the assignment, and go ahead and think about, research a little bit, and explain yourself in the prompts. And we'll see you on Wednesday. Thank you.